Hello, and welcome to the Riddles of Dr. Exor. I'm back with the fairest of them all. Just as a recap of the first two parts we did, I think if I can pull them up, I have the solutions here in GIMP. So for the first spin, we had a variant of the Moss U puzzle. I think I'm going to do another video soon on maybe some basic logic puzzles because I think I'm going to be encountering them quite often. If you haven't heard of Moss U before, maybe look it up. I think an alternate name is Pearl, but very fun. We drew a loop through there. We transferred that loop onto a new Ferris wheel, and then I colored in some of these cells, blue, green, and red. Those colors I added. We then transferred those colors onto a new wheel. I made the blue a little lighter because we're going to be putting numbers into the colors. So the rules say transfer your blue, red, green cars into this iteration. Fill the colored cars with the following numbers. I've put those into GIMP up in the upper left here, so we'll eliminate them as we use them. A number in a blue car is greater than the next number clockwise in its circle. A number in a red car is less than the next number clockwise. A number in a green car is equal to the next number clockwise. The numbers outside the ride, so that's these four or five here, 27, 8, 18, 16. These numbers tell me the sum of numbers in that section that's in the radial direction. So I'll probably refer to it as a column. I've been thinking of this as a radial grid. So when I say column, what I mean is a circle sector. When I say row, I mean a concentric circle going around and around and around and around. You'll be stir crazy by the end of this puzzle. There's six spins, so settle in tight. I've done the first two. Hopefully the next few should go a lot faster. I've solved 2.5 of them already, mainly because, as you'll see later, there are some difficulties in this transfer operation that would not be fun to have on video. So I wanted to solve it and then kind of get everything migrated over into the next section of the puzzle. But anyway, we also have what is this called? A wedge here. I pasted the wedge into GIMP as well, just for easier viewing. But the wedge tells us the sum in that circle. The blank wedges, just like the blank sectors, they don't mean a sum of 0. They mean that the sum is undefined. We're not sure what it is. So with that, I'll get right into it. I believe the start of this puzzle, trying to put these numbers into this grid, we'll start around this 18 here. And one of the things I'm going to keep coming back to is it's extremely useful to kind of center around later on. We're going to be looking to get these 8, 10, 5, 2, and 1, like those singles are going to be really pivotal in what's available. But for now, if we look at this 18, right, there's only two ways to make this, and there's a 9. You can use two 9s, right, in this sector, and you can use an 8 and a 10. Now, as I said, the 8 and the 10 are both, there's only one of them, right? So they're a little bit special. I can't use them again once I've used them once. So if we look at this green right here, green again means the car's number is equal to the next one that comes along in the circle. So I can't actually have an 8 or a 10 in this green block because then it would require an 8 or a 10 to be here as well. So I know that the combination we're going to use for this sector is actually two 9s. So that's how we'll get started here. I'm going to put two 9s. It'll be a little bit messy. I'm going to have to kind of adjust them as I go. GIMP isn't very good about, putting the text where your cursor is. It kind of goes down into the right, so it's a little hard to guess where it's going to end up. Just a second. I've got to actually configure this to put everything on a separate layer so that hopefully I can have all these numbers on another layer, and then I can kind of drop the puzzle, and move on to the next grid easily. So that should be done now. And as I said, I will remove these two 9s from our list. Again, the green means the next number in the circle is identical, so we will add another 9 right here. That's nice and simple. And is still refusing to... Oh, I think it's because every time I click on these numbers, I have to be careful, or else I'm going to merge this number onto the same layer as those instead of the rest of the numbers. Anyway, what next? So we have a couple numbers here. The greens are very telling. They are very helpful. in beginning this puzzle, if I remember correctly, having solved this once. So I'm going to write out some combinations on a sticky note, and I'll say them out loud. So pay attention, because I can't. I actually was trying the other day to get sticky notes into my stream, and something about it, maybe I just have to work on, like, see, but I don't know why it is, but I can't get the sticky note to display on the stream. Um, so that's fine. I'll have to look into that in the future. But anyway, you'll have to bear with me as I write out some combinations for some of these circle sums. So if I look at, which one do I want to do first? I think it's the third circle from the inside. We have a green, we have a red, and we have a blue. So that means the green and red have the same value. And then the next value, this outlier of the 3, is greater than the other two. So you have 3 numbers, 2 of them are the same, one of them is greater than those, and they must sum to 17. 17 is the number we're looking for. So because 2 of our numbers are identical, right, if I sum them, they have to be divisible by 2, right? It's 2 times a number. So I know, in order to sum to 17, that this outlier has to be odd. So I'm going to write my combinations out according to that, this odd number, so we can have, again, it has to be large, so I'll start large and work my way down. Adding to 17, we could have 9, 4, and 4. We could have 7, 5, and 5. Is that right? Yes, 7, 5, and 5 make 17. And the next odd number down would be 5 as the outlier, but then the others would be 5 as, or sorry, that I misspoke. 5, 6, and 6 would add to 17. But again, I said this outlier has to be greater than the other two, so 5, 6, and 6 isn't allowed, and anything further would not work either. So we have only 2 combinations that can fit in this third circle. There's 9, 4, 4, and 7, 5, 5. Now if we look up here, I only have 1, 5. So I can't use 7, 5, 5. I must use 9, 4, 4. So I will eliminate those. There's a 9. Oh, I forgot to eliminate this 9 as well. Whoops. 2 4s. Don't worry, I have a good memory for those kinds of things. Hopefully I won't make those mistakes too often. And having done that, I can add those to my grid here. The 9 is the outlier. We'll add a 9 here. Shoop. And we have a 4, and we have an identical 4. Now I need to, just a moment while I merge these down. And on we go. Let's see. The 16 easily sums with a 7. So that's an easy bit of progress. I will delete that 7 from our roster. Innermost circle has to sum to 12. The other 2 numbers, other than this 7, they must sum to 5. Needless to say, they're both less than 7. The reds would tell us that, but since they sum to 5, we know that has to be the case. In order to make a 5 with 2 digits, it has to be 1 and 4, or 2 and 3. So keep in mind that we're using a 1 or a 2 down here somewhere, because I'll be getting back to that much later. But this number, they have to be in ascending order. So this red means number is less than the next one it come across. So that means the smaller number has to appear here, the larger number has to appear here. So between 1, 4 and 2, 3, the number in this tile has to be a 3 or a 4. That means the number in this tile, in order to add to 7, also has to be a 3 or a 4. So I'm actually going to add a little note down here. We're going to take a 3 and a 4 from our list because we know they have to be in this sector. They can't be anywhere else. And that should help me as well. We've stolen a 3 and a 4. That'll help for later. That's just a note we can make. I think what I'll do next is, I think if I remember correctly, this is probably the toughest part of the puzzle. The next 2 steps are rather tricky. They're like third order. deductions, but so first I'm going to look at this fourth circle with the green, right? We made a lot of progress based on these green tiles and knowing that they have identical numbers, so we're going to do that again. In this fourth circle, the fourth circle has to sum to 15. We have a green, we have a blue, and then we have a red. So the blue is the same as the green, right? These two, the green means the next one clockwise is the same value, and then blue tells us the next value is less than. So we have an outlier. We have a third digit that is less than the other two. All three must sum to 15. Again, we have the rule earlier where since two of them are the same, right, if we sum them, it'll be 2 times a number, so it'll be even. We have an even number summing these two, and then after adding the third number, we get 15, which is odd. So the third number must be odd, and it must be smaller than the other two. So if I write out combinations that sum to 15 in that manner, I get 1, 7, and 7, 3, 6, and 6, and then if I write 5, 5, and 5, well, that's not going to work because we can't use 3 5s. So we only have 2 combinations as well for this fourth circle here. Now immediately at face value, there's not a good way to eliminate either of those. 177, 366, we have plenty of those digits. So what I have to do here is I actually have to get a little help from this 8 as well. I believe. Let's think here. So I'm going to guess the 177. All right, so I'm going to put a 1 here. That's my odd one out. Literally odd one out. We have a 7 and we have a 7. So those meet the colored conditions and they sum to 15 in the fourth row. But if I do that, I'm also going to put a 7 here. Right? We have a 7 here in order to sum to 8. So I've lost all of my 7s. I've also lost my 1. And if you remember, I told you to keep in mind, down in this central circle, we have to sum to 12, and we only have 2 possible combinations, a 1 and a 4, or a 2 and a 3. Now we've used our 1, so this becomes a 2, and this becomes a 3. Now this out here is a 4 to sum to 7. We reserved those numbers. But on the outside circle, to finish our this long chain of logic, on the outside circle we have to sum to 19 with a 9 and a 4. In order to do that, we have to have a 6. Oh, I thought that was going to be... I've gone in the wrong direction. That's not going to cause a contradiction. This is still... I'm on my way there, but this isn't the contradiction I was looking for. I was hoping it would end up sooner. Where might it... Well, I guess we'll just keep going now that we've got so many numbers on the board. But let's see. We have... I guess I can kind of start deleting things as I put them on, I guess. While let's take it as we've made a guess, right? We've made a guess of this 1. This 1 is a guess, and we've now followed it along. We've placed a bunch of numbers. We have all of the 7s are gone. We have a 1 gone. The 2 and a 3 are gone. A 4. Actually, I can't erase that 3. I already had it reserved. Whoa, that brought all my text back. Whoops. So let's see. 3 7s, a 1, a 2. The 3 and the 4 are already gone. We are taking a 6. And this is now all we have left. Which circle? You know, I think I went too far. I think it's this 7 right here. So if you look... yes. Okay, let me rewind. Okay, I've done quite a number of edits, and the contradiction, I've already kind of jumped past it, actually. It's not as complex as I've made it out to be. So, I'm going to, how many more things did I put? 177, there's our 1. Okay, there we go. That's the 3 and the 4. All right, we're all the way back. So as I said, we're going to make the same guess. We're going to, if we put a 1 here, that implies a 7 is going to be here, right? And that this is either a 1 or a 3, that based on the combinations of the fourth circle. We have a 1, 7, 7, or we have a 3, 6, 6. So I guess the 1, and I put a 7 here. Look at this concentric circle. We don't have a sum for it to expect. However, we do know this red tile means that the 7 has to be less than what comes after it. And that number, in blue, has to be greater than the number after it, which is greater than 7. So we have to have 2 numbers here that are unique, right? They can't be equal, or this would be green. They're different numbers, greater than 7, both greater than 7. So that's an 8 and a 10. We don't actually have anything else other than the 8 of a 10. The 10 goes here, the 8 goes here. And now, if I look down in the second row, let's try and make the second row sum to 19, and we don't have the 10 or the 8, right? Without a 10 or an 8 left, if I use, let's even for fact, if I ignore what else I put down, right? I've put down a 10 and an 8. 3 sevens in this second row sum to 21, no, excuse me, sorry, that's a terrible way of phrasing it. Sorry. These numbers are all distinct, right? Blue, red, and red without any greens. We know that they're all different numbers, and they have to be less than 8 because we've used our 8 and a 10. So this second row, at best, would have 7, 6, and 5, which sums to 18, which is too small. And that's the contradiction I was aiming for. So if I guess a 1, it forces a 7, which forces 10, 8, and without a 10 or an 8 in this blue tile, or really just in any of these, but this one has to be the largest, without an 8 or a 10 in this row, we cannot make a sum of 19. So without further ado, I can now, let's see, where will I do it? I will mark this as a 366 in this circle. That's what this circle has to be. In order to sum to 15, we have to get a 366. I think that is the most complex part of the puzzle by far. Definitely where I got stuck the longest when I was solving, and obviously, as you could tell, I got kind of on a tangent, working my way around half the other puzzle, which does eventually, help, but that's much more direct. So let's see, we have 3, 6, and 6. That doesn't include the 3 and the 4 we took out, so I will erase all of those numbers from our list. I will merge all of these down. What else can we do here? Of course, the 5. So the 5 gets put to sum to 8. What now? Actually, so now I'll go back to that. I mentioned this. This tile has to be an 8 or a 10, and we can rededuce that if you look again. Like, let's assume there is not an 8 or a 10 in this tile. And this tile, being blue, has to be the largest of these 3, since reds imply they are less than the next tile. So this one is the largest. Let's say it's not an 8 or a 10. Let's say it's a 7. So let's say we had a 7, a 5, and a 6. Those sum to 18, which is not enough. So we absolutely need an 8 or a 10 in this tile. Now, if I actually assume that the 8 goes here, there is only one combination that will sum to 19 with the 8. So again, if I'm assuming the 8 is here, taken from 19, these two tiles must sum to 11. And the only way I can do that is with 5 and 6, right? I don't have a 4 for 7 and 4. I've used the 8, so I can't do another 8 and 3, right? And then anything else would have to be a 9 or higher, which we can't use any higher numbers. So 5 and 6 would have to go here. We have used our 5. In fact, I need to eliminate it from my list. So we've used the 5, which means we can't have an 8 here, which means there must be a 10. And now I think the rest of the puzzle will be much simpler. Definitely working out this pair, this 3 and 5, is very tough. And then noticing this deduction of the 10 is pretty difficult, but I think this is helped again by the fact that in order to make this deduction, I had to kind of examine this already. So I already had that in my mind, that 8 and the 10 had to be here. I'd actually previously written down all the combinations for 8 and 10, and the 10s get lengthy, but the 8 only has 1, and as soon as we use the 5, we know exactly what's going on here. So we throw a 10 there. We can take it off our list. Whoops, let's get in the text box. I need to merge down some of these. Where is my 10? There we go. To merge down the 10. Let me see if I can make this sum to 19, actually. So we have the 10. We know the remaining 2 have to sum to 9. We could do 8 and 1, 7 and 2. Not determined yet. Maybe the 20. I think we look at this 20 here. So these two tiles have to sum to 10. And that's much better because we only have, first of all, we only have 2 possibilities. We have 8 and 2, we have 7 and 3. Those are the only ways to sum to 10 with 2 digits. It actually can't be the 8 and 2, and here's why. If I put the 8 on the outside, It has to be less than the number that comes here, right? This number has to be greater than this number. So if I put the 8 here, there's no number. I would have to be a 10, right? But we've already placed the 10. So the 8 can't go on the outside due to this tile. And likewise, we get the same restriction on this, is the 8 would have to be less than the tile before it, which is blue. So we can't have the 8 in either of these tiles. So we know that these two are a 7 and a 3. Can we learn which one is which? Yes, we cannot put the 3 here. The 3 has to be greater than 5, or the blue tile here has to be greater than 5. So the 7 will go here, and the 3 will go here. Oh, I placed those quite nicely. I believe that checks out. So we have the 7 and the 3. 7 and 3. Now, we know again, actually looking up here, we know this tile has to be greater than 7. So there goes our 8 that we've been waiting so long to place. We have an 8. I have not merged my 10 down. Actually, something's odd. I seem to have merged these 5 numbers at some point. Whoops. I put those on my solution layer. That's not good. Oh no, that... I say that, but it can't be true. Oh, I see. I merged them into the 10 by accident. Okay, well we'll keep on. I think I'll be replacing the 10 later. Can I access them? How did I do that? How in the world did I do that? What did I merge the 10 onto? I'm very confused. Okay, it looks like it worked. It's something strange is happening in GIMP. I have many things to learn. But anyway, on we go. I think we're okay here. So let's see let me hit the undo button and see kind of what I've been up to. Goodness gracious. Me oh my. Okay, gonna merge the 8 down into my solution. We now have, I don't know what, oh, that's right, the 3 and the 4 are down here. Okay, I was looking for, there's just a bunch of layers in GIMP that are distracting me here, sorry. So, we have the 7 and the 3, we have the 8 placed. We have, most of our outer sums are complete. This is almost done, we just have to place those later. As for the rings, we have the 15 is done, the 17 is done. The 19, we were looking at the 10 before we didn't narrow it down. These have to sum to 9, and now I've gotten rid of the 8, so my only options are 7 and 2, so I can actually place those. The red means less than, so 2 must be less than 7. I am doing a terrible job of merging these down. And now I should, again, remove these. And I have 3 numbers left, a 1, 6, and a 7. We have, I haven't placed these yet, so I suppose we should look right at the center. So these have to be 1 or 4, 2 or 3. I've used the 2 now, so I know that this is a 1, this is a 4, and this is a 3. The outer ring must sum to 19, so 9, 3, and that will be a 7. And finally, a 6. And, whoops. Now I can essentially delete. Let's see, where is that? Oh, come on now. Delete the layer. Just position all these numbers, and that's the solution to spin number 3. Can I delete that layer? No, it's not letting me. There we are. So getting rid of some extra numbers here. We have 6. We have anything else out of place before I do the final merge? I think everything's looking good. 7 and 6. So now let me make sure they're all on the layer. Excellent. So yes, I've placed all the numbers. We've achieved all of our sums in all directions, and that's spin number 3. So on to the next set of instructions. Spin number 4, rotate the rod from spin 3 such that the numbers you added overlap only white cars. Then transfer the numbers into those cars. So I have done that already because I learned this very quickly. This would be very difficult. But if I get rid of this puzzle, so now I've got the next puzzle. This is spin number 4. And thanks to me putting all of these numbers on a separate layer, I can now take a rotating tool, and if I have it selected right, just rotate them around until I see that they all fit into white spaces. So I see I've got this 9 on the left here that's inside a gray tile, so I'm not there yet. But if you look right here, everything happens to line up if I hit rotate. It's a little bit off. Maybe I can shift it just into alignment. So you see all of these numbers end up in white tiles, which is all nice. But it would take me a very long time to reorient all of these numbers, so I've done it outside of the video. I've prepared that in advance. So if I make sure real quick I've got them all, I will simply bring them into view. So here we are. Here are all of the numbers rotated from their positions in the previous iteration of the puzzle. I've placed them into the white cells. The new instructions say, fill each shaded car with the numbers 0, 1, 2, or 3. Each number you transferred from the previous step indicates the sum of the numbers in all adjacent shaded cars. So if I get a paint bucket just to demonstrate something, that means this 10 is the sum of 1, and it's not coloring right. Just a moment. I need to have the right layer selected, I believe. Let's try this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The 10 is the sum of those 5 numbers. We include diagonals. Any shaded cell touching a number contributes to its sum. And then the other rules are that if any section has any 3s or any 0s, they are shown outside the section. So these 3s and 0s are on the outside. I count for all of the 3s and 0s in shaded cells. So that's going to cut out a lot of work for us. But let's see. I have a new layer. I have a new layer ready to place numbers into. And now I can get started. Where to begin? This 8 is a great place to begin. Again, we only have the numbers 0, 1, 2, and 3 at our disposal. So with 3 cells adjacent to the 8, there's actually only one way to make that sum, and that's 3, 3, and 2. It just takes a little bit of math, but 3, 3, and 2 is the only way to do it. And look, we have our 2 3s right in this column. So there's no question about how they are organized. 1, 3 goes here. Whoops. 1, 3 goes here. A 2 goes here. Let me kind of drag those into their cells. I'm looking forward to it in the future when we have more crossword type puzzles. Like with this weird grid, I have no other option than to kind of use a photo editor. I could have been in Paint. I could have been in a couple of different things. But normally, I'll just be able to type into cells rather than have this kind of awkward dragging of numbers around. But this is fine. It does its job. And again, I kind of also had to do it this way because that's what made the rotation so easy, right? Is being able to rotate it in the editor as well is very nice. So let's see. There's a 7. A 7 is made by 3, 3, and a 1. So that's a given. We now have a 3. I don't know if we'll be able to work on that yet, but this 3 right here, this 3 is a sum of 3, and clearly a 0 must go in this cell. If I center it. Now, this 4 and 10 will be towards the end. This is kind of a complex area. So I think I can look in another direction. I can look towards the top half. And if we look at this 2, being a low number, is actually surrounded by 3 shaded cells. Now I'd love to have, so we have a couple options, right? We definitely can't have any 3s. So let's say, what if there's a 2 in one of these cells? It means the other 2 cells have to contain a 0. But in this column and in this column, I only have 1 0 listed on the outside total. Between the 2, I only have 1 0. So that means I can't have 2 0 0. I must have 1 1 and 0 in some fashion. But seeing that there's not a 0 here, I know where one of the ones is. I know this 1 is here. And this 4 will help us determine where the other one is. Because let's say I put the 0, right? So these 2 tiles are a 0 and a 1 attached to the 2. And let's say I put the 0 here. Well, now the 4 only has a 1 next to it so far. It would have to have a 3 here. But the 3 is required to be listed on the outside of the circle, so that's not right. We have to place the 0 on the inside of the circle and the 1 out here. Let me just drag those into view. And that for the 4 also we can complete that with a 2. Place a 2 right there. I shall merge all of these new numbers into my solution layer. I think I have all of them. Good, good, good. That's going well. We have a 3. That's interesting to look at, but let's see. Can we do anything with that 3? Oh, this 4 actually. Look at this 4. This 4, right, can only be made with a 0 next to it. It has to have a 1, 3 or a 2, 2. And a 1, 3 would require a 3 to be listed on the outside of one of these sectors, but it is not. So we know that both of these are filled by 2's. So that's a nice way to add. Now I think I can work a little bit in this area. So my question is, where is the 0, right? We have a 0 in one of these two tiles. Well, if I put the 0 right here, this 6, right, has a 0 and a 0 next to it. And there would have to be 2 3's here in order to make a 6. But there is not a 3 in this column, so that's not right, and I can't have the 0 here. The 0 has to be all the way on the outside. And that means, actually I don't quite know what that is. I know it's a 1 or a 2, but we're not sure which one it is just yet. I think we have to kind of come in from this direction. But the 0 helps us because we have a 3 out here. We only have a 1 so far, so that has to be a 2. With a 0 and a 2 next to this 5, the remaining 3 shaded cells have to add to a total of 3. We know one of them is a 0, so that means the other two have to be 1 and 2. So we have a 1, 2, and a 0 here. Not the greatest start, but if we look over at this 9, this 9 has 5 shaded cells next to it. Oh, we haven't used this 3 yet. Ooh, look down here. I hadn't gotten to the 7s. I hadn't quite made my way around the circle. This 7 is now ready to go because we have a 1 placed here, which we did very early. And now, the only way to make this sum of 7 is to add 2 3's, which conveniently are provided to us on the outside, so we know that there's no problem with that. We'll add 2 3's here. We have another 7 here, so we can add a 1 as well. Let me merge all of those new numbers into my solution. And now back to where I was on this 9. So this 9 has 5 shaded cells. We know that these are none of them are 3 actually. We have no 3's in these columns, and this 3 we have just used. So without any 3's, right, even if, let me put it this way. If I think that one of these two tiles is this 0, right, then the remaining 4, even if they were all 2's, if it was 0, 2, 2, 2, and 2, they would still add to 8. It would not be sufficient to sum to 9. So I can't have a 0 in either of these two tiles. The 0 in this column must be here. I know I think that was kind of a lot, so I'll say one more time. If I had a 0 in either of these two tiles, I would not be able to make these 5 sum to 9 because I can't have any 3's. And 0 and 4 2's would not sum to 9. That would be 8. It would be too short. So I'll put the 0 here. We know this is a 1 and a 2, right, to make the 5. And if this is a 1 and a 2, right, it sums to 3. And we have to have 6 across these 3 tiles to make this 9. And again, we can't use 3's, so it actually does check out that these are all 2's. We can end up just filling all 3 cells with 2's. So can we make this elimination of the 1 and 2 combo yet? I don't know. I think it has to do with this 9 here. So this 9, we have a 6. We have 3 2's here. We have 6 of this 9's worth. And so there'll be a 1 2 pair across here. But that'll depend on this 9. So we're kind of chaining all these 9's together. So we already have 1 2 3 4 5 6 on this 9 as well. So this will have to be a 1 2 pair. Again, no 3's allowed and no 0's allowed. We've used the 3's and the 0's aren't listed. If these are a 1 2 pair, what can we do with that? So look at these two sixes. Actually, something strikes me here. So if I put a 2 here, if I put a 2 right there, right, and I have a 1, 2 pair here, based on needing 3 more for this 9. If I put the 2 in that position, sorry, I reversed it. I meant to say if I put the 1 in this position, it's just, I'm too happy. You know what I mean? If I put the 1 in this position, in order to make this 6 sum correctly, I need 2 more 2's. 2, 2, 2. 1, 1, 2, and 2 would sum to 6. So I'd have to put 2 2's here. But now look, we've actually finished this 6. And there are 2 more cells here. There are 2 more gray cells, and they would both have to be zeros. And one of them is fine, but this one is not. This one cannot be a 0. We don't have that listed. So that's not right. I cannot rewind all the way back to where I put a 1 in this cell. I know this cell must be a 2. This cell must be a 1. I can cross this over again. I need a 2 for this 9. And as I said, I need a 1 for the 5. Well, and this 9 as well. So all of those numbers cascading all the way across. Actually, I really have not looked at this bottom right half of the circle. It looks like with 2 zeros here, we have a pretty obvious 0. I don't think it's going to do much for us because it looks like this was kind of indeterminate when I was just looking. But at the very least, you see there's a 1 here. So one of these cells has to be a 1. And that means that one of our 2 zeros has to go out here. So I can put that 0 there. That's actually fine. But I don't think we can do anything else with that. We're not quite sure what's happening next. This pair has to be a 1 and a 2 for this 6. Right? We have 1, 2, 1, 2. No 3's, no 0's allowed. They have to sum to 3, and there's only one way to do that. So we have a 1 and a 2 here. And that sums to 5 on this 6. We have a 1 and a 2 pair here, and we have another 2. So we actually know that we can put a 1 here. Whoa! How did I do that? That was, what did I type? A 1? What is a 1 a shortcut for in the move tool? So we have a 1 here. And now look at this 7, I think. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attached to this 7. Again, we've already used our 3 and no zeros are possible. So the only option is to fill both of these cells with a 1 in order to make the 7 possible. And now this 9 looks almost done. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this must be a 2. That makes 8, 9. And now we can fill the 1. Let's see. We are wrapping this up real fast. From which direction should we approach? This 3, we didn't finish this 3, so that's simply a 2. This 3 has a 0 and a 1 next to it. Simple enough. I'm merging numbers down. Everything looks good. We just have to finish this little area around the 10. So this 10 is interesting. I'll say something like a broad generalization that I'm probably about to use, but again, we're looking for a 3 that we haven't used in this sector. We know it has to be, one of these has to be a 3. And we've used the 3's in this column. We are not allowed to have 3's in this column. We've already used all our zeros, so we have no zeros allowed. So in order to make this sum of 10, right, I'm considering like all of these 5. One of them must be a 3. One of them has to be a 1, right, in order to make, because we have to end up with an even, well, let me just put it this way. These tiles have to be 2, 2, 2, 3, and 1 in some order, since we know we have a 3, and we can't have any other 3's or zeros. That's the array that has to happen in some order. There are 3 2's, one of them we have placed, a 3 and a 1. So now here, in fact, let me make this guess. If I put the 3 here, let's say the 3 is here. So for the 6, I means I have to have a 1 here, right? And I just said with that combination, there have to be 2's elsewhere in order to make the sum of 10. We have to have 2's. I've just broken this 4, however, and I have a 3 and a 2. That's too much. So I can rewind. That 3 is in the wrong spot. I can actually put the 3 on the inside, which, oh my goodness, really finishes up all of the 3's and 0's on the outside. I believe have now been accounted for. I see them all on the grid. We have a 3 in here. There's a 1 somewhere, and then there are 2 2's. But knowing that our 3s and 0s are used up, in order to make this 6 happen, we need 2 2s. So there we are. I can now put a 1 here. That the 10 is finished, but now for the 4 we have 0 2 1. We need a 1, and to finish up we have a 0. We have the final 0. Let me just center those. That is spin number 4. And let me combine them all again into one layer. I now have the full solution together. If I take out these are the numbers we started with in white. If I take them out, I should have all of the gray cells filled. I should be able to toggle them all. Great, I have the full layer. I just wanted to make sure something wasn't on a different layer, because I can't be missing a number when I move on to the next step. So that's spin number 4. Much nicer than the previous step. I think definitely spin 3 has been the hardest for me so far. That was a very tricky and very interesting mechanic of a little number game. So let's see, what else is there to say? I think that's spin number 4, so we can move straight on to spin number 5.